So I'm going to make a quick video here just about some intellectual history, social engineering, and how that kind of plays into this little spreadsheet that I've made right here that has a circular reference in it. So anyway, what I'm doing right here is I'm saying, okay, well, we've got age-based insurance differential. So here's the $500 for Tier 1. Here's the cost of living differential. So here's the cost of living for Tier 1. Pakistan is the lowest, US is the highest. I've just put some numbers in here. I also have what we call profession-based wage differential from maybe a lawyer and down to a graphic artist, and the different dollar per hour figures for different professions. So I have a three-dimensional matrix here. This is a 3 by 7 basically. Well, this would be 2 by 7, but then this matrix is only a 4. Has only 4 cells to it. But what I've done here is I've taken this. See this 1 1 1? It represents Tier 1, Tier 1, Tier 1. So here's Tier 1 is here. Yeah, Tier 1 is here, and then Tier 1 is here. And based on this structure, of course, here is a 4 1 1. So here is Tier 4, right? And Tier 1, which you're not seeing here. What this is it's the adjusted age-based insurance. So there's an adjustment happening to the age-based insurance here that knocks it down, and then here's another adjustment based on the cost of living, including the cost of living metric, and applying that to this adjusted wage-based insurance. Age-based insurance. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm saying that, like, I'm just going back to this concept of social Darwinism. If I just go back to here, basically survival of the fittest in a social sense, where this guy, who's his name? This guy Spencer, Herbert Spencer. He basically said, well, let's apply survival of the fittest to the social masses, and the weak should die, and the strong should live. So and then he applied this to economic Darwinism, and so the idea was that if you even tried to help the poor at all, it was an act against nature, that the poor should die. That was his idea. So that's pure capitalism, which really made Marx and Engels angry, and it also inspired a guy named Robert Owen, who you may know of him, but he was a sort of a moderate socialist compared to Marx and Engels, who were extreme socialists. Okay, but in any case, there's a history here where that goes back to Adam Smith and the physiocrats, because you see the physiocrats were the first real systemic laissez-faire guys, where in France they had been kicking the peasants off their land and using scientific farming and getting massive yields, like 4x, 5x of what a peasant would get. And so Adam Smith went up there and he looked at that and he says, oh, okay, well, let's do capitalism based on the physiocratic principles. And so he wrote up The Wealth of Nations based on that. And there is a little bit of social Darwinism inside The Wealth of Nations, and it's true. A lot of times health and wage, the fault line between good health and bad health, and good wages and bad wages, high wages and low wages, the fault line runs along the same crack there, kind of. So there is some reflection of truth to that, but I don't know, like from a policy perspective, when we have a welfare system where we tax the rich and support the poor, that is putting some constraints on basically hardcore social or economic Darwinism, right? and so how do you deal with that across these three dimensions here, right? We've got the cost of living dimension across different regions. You've got the age-based insurance, which is, it has to be somewhat equitable. This has to be somewhat equitable when we're actually hiring people pan-regionally. And then you have also the profession-based dimension here, which is another disparity dimension. There's like a graphics artist at $20 an hour. He's going to be paying much higher percentage for his. Here's the graphic artist, right? Number 7, the third dimension here, the PBW is number 7, and so he's paying a lot more for this level of health insurance than somebody at a higher wage, right? Somebody who's making they're $60 an hour. It's the same rate on health insurance because the age is the same, but based on his income, it's a much lower spend. All right, so that's my approach here is kind of socialist based. Now, you can look up Robert Owen. He's the guy who came up with that place in Indiana called I guess it was New Harmony, which he had tried it in. He was a textile factory manager. He was a manager of and then he did really well because he had a socialist approach, and it really motivated the workers, right? So he tried taking that to the British Parliament, which they shot him down, and they said they're not interested. So he said, what the heck? So I guess if I want to do this, I got to go to America. And he went to America and started up this New Harmony, which is still a thing, New Harmony, Indiana. They still are based on, they tout their Owen-based histories. But it worked while he was there, but when he went back to England, there was a lot of infighting among the managers in the factory, and the system broke down. My contention is that in many kinds of, management paradigms, there's a lot of different types of management paradigms that would work. If there was a way to mitigate the human factor, right? So this, in using programmatic systems where you don't have to vote, you just do your fairness settings, and you just agree on 2 settings. You have to agree on the 75% setting and the 110% setting, and that's all you have to agree upon, and everything is refactored. So it's a multidimensional algorithm that I'm trying to define for some kind of social engineering, right? In that way. Okay, so what do we have here then? For the age-based, you've got a high spend here, and for these younger ones, I only went up to tier 5 here. I only went up to tier 5 because 15-year-olds and 5-year-olds, they don't work, so I can't really give them the hourly and the cost of living factorial here. Okay, but anyway, I only went up to tier 5. Tier 5, tier 5 guys are 25 years old. They have to pay $95 a month. But if we take 75% and we say that, okay, this, let's break this out into this total spend, right? This is the spend of all of the cost of the entire package. Like if a company was going to pay that. The total cost is $8,100. If we split it 75-25, here's the 75% factor. Here's the 25% factor. And what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, let's have you pay, of this $95, you pay 75% of that, and then this $2,000, we're going to divide it equally among all 35 people. And so that's an extra $58 for this 25% of the total, right? So it's extra $58 each. So I'm going to pay my 75% share plus 58, and he's going to pay his 75% share of this 125 plus the 58. So what we're in effect doing is raising the price for the lower workers, right? We're raising the amount that they have to pay so that we can lower the amount that the older guys have to pay. So it levels it keeps the fairness dimension, because there is a difference between a 65-year-old and a 55-year-old in the cost of insurance. So we want to maintain that difference, yes. But but we want to level the playing field. See, these guys are still paying a little bit less than they normally would. These guys now are paying a little bit more than they normally would. Tier 3, the 45-year-olds. The 35-year-olds are paying a bit more than these guys, and these guys are paying the most. The younger guys are paying the most. The 25-year-olds. Now you can play with this. You can drop this down to 50% instead of 75, and the difference for these guys becomes less, and the difference for these guys becomes less. But if you pump it back up to 75% again, you can see that these guys are now paying more and these guys are paying less. Okay, so that's the age-based dimension. What we did for the cost of living dimension, we took this adjusted number and we put it over here, and we said, okay, let's multiply that by the tier 2 dimension. So we've just taken that adjusted number and we've knocked it down. And we did the same here. We took that adjusted number, we knocked it down by this cost of living factor, the 28.18%. And finally, this is the lowest one, Pakistan, $1,000 a month is the cost of living there. And we knocked that down. We ran the age-based vertical adjustment, and then we applied that. We applied the reduction factor here. So that's the first step along the vertical dimension. and then I'm looking at this other factor, because these low wage people are actually spending 10%. Well, listen, I mean, if you're 65 years old and you're only making $4 an hour, yeah, you may be retired. At 65 years old, you don't have to pay. Your children are grown up. Your house is paid down. Well, depending on where you are, and you just don't need that much money. You're probably living off some retirement. You're more stable at this period of your life. So I do believe that this sector here, especially these bottom 3, are kind of anomalies. I guess there's going to be some people that are in their 60s that are making $40 an hour or $7 an hour. Very few that are making $20 an hour or $4 an hour at that age, but maybe. But in any case, if I put this to 100% so nothing changes, then these guys actually end up having to pay. Well, that's equal, isn't it? Yeah. So if I drop this down to like 90%, then these guys are actually paying more than these guys. But if I put this up to 110%, then these guys are actually paying a little bit less than these guys, which in a rich country, compared to a poor country, may be an equitable thing to do. And especially when you get down into here, where you're talking about young people just for starting out, they're already carrying the burden of the older generation on them, because look at the demographics are changing in a society where you got more old people and less young people. I would go ahead and put this up to 120, and these guys are paying less than their share, and these guys are paying more. And this is in a capital rich society where you have more old people than you have young people, maybe. Or let's see, I mean, anyway, you can screw around with this. I'll put this back to 80%. But the point being here is that this is a age dimension, and this is a demographic dimension. So by using this number and putting it up to 110%, I'm actually asking these guys in this rich country to pay a little bit more of the cost than these guys in the poor country. So it's a really interesting exercise building this out. I think I think it could be extremely powerful. The other thing I will say before closing this out is that these guys, this Numero, I don't know if you know these guys, but you can type in pretty much any city here, and you get all of the cost of living, transportation, monthly utilities, childcare, rent per month, apartment prices, stuff like that. And interestingly, they have an API. So if we tied this API into our WorkZone application, and then we could set up some, we had some settings where we could dial in some of these factors. I think we'd have a really interesting platform to sort of manage a little bit the social equity in our system.